For most of human history, looking out at the ocean meant looking at this vast, open frontier.
Right, it was a symbol of freedom.
Exactly. A place to explore or just, get lost in a good way. But today, if you stand on a coastline and look out at the Pacific, I mean, the feeling is entirely different.
Yeah, you aren't looking at a frontier anymore.
No, you're looking at a locked vault. You can hear that low thrumming vibration just kind of shaking the pebbles on the beach. You see that sickly blue glow pulsing up from under the waves. And well, we all know what's breathing on the other side of that water.
It completely changes what it means to be human on this planet.
Right.
Because the ocean is their fortress now. It's this constant suffocation reminder that Earth, in the year 3000, is a shared world.
Yeah.
And we are very much the tenants currently facing eviction.
Which is the harsh reality that brings us to today's deep dive. Because survival in this era doesn't come from just, ignoring the vault. It comes from understanding how the lock works.
Exactly. You have to know the mechanics of it.
Right. So today we are breaking open the official Human Alliance intelligence record, Terra Bathyallus.
Which is just an incredible document.
It really is. It's absolute required listening for anyone out there trying to navigate our current reality. We're going to deconstruct the Abyssal Cephalopoda, our invaders. We're going to look at the hard biological facts of how they operate, how their deeply alien anatomy forces them to build their tech the way they do, and most importantly, what the HA intelligence says about how we can fight back.
Because in an era defined by global guerrilla warfare, reaction is a death sentence.
Yeah, if you're reacting, you're already too late.
Precisely. The Human Alliance survives through anticipation. We have to understand the why and the how behind their movements, from their underwater megacities to the horrifying logistics of those coastal processing pods.
Which we will definitely get into.
Every single action they take is chained to their biology. So if we map those biological needs, we map their vulnerabilities.
Let's start by mapping where they actually came from. Because to figure out how they function today, we really need to look at the environment that forged them.
Right, the origin story.
Yeah. So the Great Descent happened in 2890, a little over a century ago, when those biological arcs crashed through our atmosphere and plunged into the oceans. And the assumption for decades was that they were interstellar, right?
Yeah, that they warped in from Alpha Centauri or some distant galaxy.
But the Terra Bathyallus record confirms they didn't come from another star system at all. They came from our own Oort Cloud.
They were practically our neighbors on a cosmic scale.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. They originated on Planet X. And human astronomers spent the early 21st century arguing over whether this celestial body even existed.
Right. It was just a theory for the longest time.
Exactly. We finally confirmed it in 2842. And it's a dark super-Earth trapped in the freezing outer fringes of our solar system, completely starved of sunlight.
So no solar energy whatsoever.
None. The environment is unimaginably hostile. We're talking about a frozen liquid ammonia crust, and trapped beneath that ice is this massive, ultra-pressurized, iron-rich subterranean ocean.
A heavy iron ocean capped by ammonia ice, floating in just pitch black space. I mean, it sounds like an environment designed to instantly crush anything that tries to live there.
And yet, that crushing environment is the exact crucible that evolved the Abyssal Cephalopoda. They thrived in that dark, high-pressure ecosystem for millennia.
Just adapting to synthesize energy without a sun.
Right. But planetary stability is fragile. So a rogue brown dwarf, basically a failed star drifting through space, passed a little too close to our solar system.
It's like a cosmic wrecking ball.
It really was. Its gravity snagged Planet X, destabilizing its orbit and sending it hurtling on this deteriorating path right toward the inner solar system. The planet was going to tear apart or burn up. So they had absolutely no choice but to launch their biological arcs.
So I was reading the trajectory logs in the HA report, and this brings up a massive question for me. If you're listening to this, you're probably wondering the same thing. If they had the biological tech to launch themselves across the solar system, why bypass our land masses entirely?
A great question.
Like, when you have that kind of technology, you'd think they would park their arcs in a huge valley or clear out a desert to build a colony. Instead, they hit our atmosphere and nosedive straight into the water.
Well, the land masses of Earth offered them absolutely nothing.
Figured all.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Remember their origin. They are creatures forged in an ultra-pressurized ocean. Our surface atmosphere is practically a vacuum to them.
Oh, wow. So our normal air pressure is like being in outer space for them.
Exactly. When they arrived, their sensors sought out the only environment on this planet that wouldn't instantly kill them, the Mariana Trench.
The deepest part of the ocean?
Right. They targeted the Challenger Deep, going 6 miles below sea level, because the
Mm.
1,000 bar of pressure down there was the closest match to the crushing hydro pressures of their home world.
So they didn't retreat into the oceans to hide from us.
Not at all.
They went down there because they were desperately trying to find a place where their bodies wouldn't literally fall apart.
Hiding was never on the agenda. And the deep ocean also provided this limitless supply of raw manufacturing materials. The abyssal plains are just blanketed in deep-sea volcanic basalt and biogenic silica.
Which is essentially trillions of microscopic, decaying biological shells, right?
Yes, exactly. So they had infinite pressure and infinite building materials, meaning they never had to risk stepping foot on the dry, thin surface to mine for resources.
And what they managed to build with that underwater mud and silica is honestly terrifying. The record details the transformation of the Pacific Plain into a megacity the HA calls Arlaia Prime.
A sprawling metropolis anchored 6 miles deep.
And it's not the pitch-black abyss we used to read about in old marine biology textbooks. The intelligence reports describe this intense 470-nanometer bioluminescent glow.
Blues, greens, and ultraviolet light just flooding the trench.
Yeah. And the report mentions the city is powered by cold fusion silicon arrays. I need to pause here because that sounds like straight-up science fiction jargon. How does a biological creature operate cold fusion at the bottom of the ocean?
It comes back to how they use that deep-sea environment. The abyssals evolved to weave biogenic silica into their own structural technology.
Okay.
So under the extreme pressure of the trench, certain crystalline structures in their silicon arrays develop immense piezoelectric properties.
Meaning they generate electricity when squeezed. Right, like how a lighter works.
Precisely. They generate massive electrical fields when squeezed by the weight of the ocean, and they channel this localized charge through ocean water, heavy with naturally occurring deuterium, catalyzing a low-energy nuclear reaction.
That is just deeply unsettling. They turn the physical weight of the ocean into a battery.
It's brilliant, but yes, deeply unsettling.
To grasp how a species even engineers something like that, we have to look at the creatures themselves. A lot of folks listening up in the mountain redoubts have probably only seen blurry drone footage of them.
Which doesn't really do them justice.
Not at all. The HA record describes a radially symmetrical entity, almost like a hybrid of a giant squid and a hyper-complex nervous system turned inside out.
Yeah, that's a good way to picture it.
And the scale is just absurd. A single adult spans 30 meters long. Just for context, if one of those things stretched out inside the subterranean rail corridors we use, it would block 3 entire train cars end to end.
The physical presence is staggering, for
Yeah.
sure. And they navigate using 12 specialized tentacles. But we really shouldn't view them as limbs in the human sense.
Right, they aren't just arms and legs.
Evolution heavily modified their sucker discs. They aren't just for gripping rock or holding prey. The discs are dense with neurochemical sensors and dermal injection needles.
So they interact with their environment by tasting it, chemically analyzing it, and mechanically manipulating it all at the exact same time.
Simultaneously, yes.
Looking at the biological schematics in the record, I was trying to figure out how they actually think. Because when you picture a sea creature, even a smart one, you look for a centralized brain. But I don't see a giant cranium anywhere on these things. How do they process all that sensory data?
We have to completely throw out the human model of intelligence. The human nervous system is highly centralized, right? A localized brain issues commands to passive limbs.
Yeah, the brain is the boss, the arms do the work.
Exactly. But the abyssals operate on something closer to a distributed cloud computing network.
Which is a crazy concept for a biological organism.
It is. They possess a central hub, a ring of about 100 billion quantum-dense core neurons, but that only handles the very high-level processing.
So the core ring is just the server room. The rest of the processing power is scattered.
Considerably scattered. They have an additional 500 billion autonomous sensory motor neurons distributed entirely throughout those 12 tentacles.
Wow.
This creates a truly multi-threaded consciousness.
Meaning they don't have to divide their attention. Like a human tries to read a book and listen to a conversation at the same time, and our brain bottlenecks. We just can't do it.
We fail miserably at it.
But an abyssal can be calculating cold fusion outputs with its core ring, while its tentacles are independently scanning ocean currents, building silicon architecture, and decoding chemical traces in the water without any drop in efficiency.
That multi-threaded architecture also explains their technological interface. The intelligence confirms that their biological neurons actually extend into biosilicon conductive threads.
Think of them like organic fiber optic cables just growing straight out of their nervous system.
Exactly. They don't push buttons or pull levers. They physically plug their nerve endings into their silicon machinery. The machine and the mind become a single, contiguous circuit.
But a mind running a network of 600 billion neurons, housed in a body the size of 3 train cars operating in freezing water. I mean, the caloric requirement must be astronomical.
It is beyond astronomical.
Which leads us to the grim reality of their biology. I'm looking at the anatomical breakdown, and there is no stomach. There's no digestive tract for processing solid matter like fish or kelp.
Right, because they are hemovores. They evolved on planet X without solid flora or fauna to consume, surviving instead on deep ocean chemical nutrients.
But here on Earth, they found a different liquid nutrient source.
They did. They rely entirely on direct plasma absorption.
Human hemoglobin. They run an entire empire on our blood.
The hemoglobin acts as their primary energy substrate. It provides these massive, immediate caloric payloads, but it serves a secondary, far more complex function too.
The psychoactive element.
Yes. The HA medical teams have found that human blood acts as a psychoactive vector for the abyssals. It doesn't just fuel their muscles, it fundamentally alters their neurochemistry.
So our blood is basically a biological accelerant for their cloud computing minds. We are a drug and a battery rolled into one.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
Which introduces the biggest paradox in this entire intelligence report. We've established they absolutely require human blood from the surface to survive, right?
Yes.
But we also established their bodies require the crushing 10,000-meter deep pressure of the Mariana Trench to keep from falling apart. I mean, we've all seen what happens when you pull a deep-sea blobfish to the surface.
It turns into jelly.
Right, because the pressure holding its body together is gone. So how on earth is a 30-meter alien hovering over the ruins of San Francisco right now without catastrophically exploding?
The term for this biological adaptation is pisophile. They are extreme pisophiles. Their soft, gelatinous tissue is sustained by an immense internal hydrostatic counterpressure of over 1,000 bar.
So they push out with the same force the ocean pushes in.
Exactly. If an abyssal attempted to swim up to our surface without protection, the lack of external ocean pressure would cause that 1,000 bar inside them to violently expand.
It's just instant vaporization.
Their cellular walls would shred in a fatal event of explosive decompression.
To get around this, they built what I can only describe as the most horrifying reverse scuba suit imaginable.
That is exactly what it is.
Like when a human dives down to the trench, we sit inside a pressurized titanium sphere to keep the crushing weight of the water out. When an abyssal comes up to harvest our coasts, they sit inside a pressurized suit to keep the crushing weight of the water in.
You've just described the 100-foot biomechanical bioships patrolling our shorelines.
But these aren't submarines with a steering wheel and a throttle.
No, not at all. They are living biosilicon hulls. When a harvest protocol is initiated, the abyssal slots its physical body into the central amniotic chamber of the bioship.
And using those biosilicon conductive threads we discussed, it wires its distributed nervous system directly into the ship's network.
The quantum molecular silicon network, yes. The QMS.
So the ship becomes an armored, flying extension of the alien's own body. It holds 1,000 bar of artificial deep-sea pressure inward against the creature, allowing it to fly through our thin surface atmosphere without rupturing.
To the alien pilot, it feels like it's still comfortably resting in the Mariana Trench, even while it's skimming the skyline of a human city.
The engineering required to maintain that localized atmospheric bubble is staggering. Which brings us to a really harsh logistical truth.
The labor force.
Right. The abyssals live 6 miles underwater. They do not have the surface mobility to manufacture, refine, and assemble these colossal 100-foot biosilicon ships on their own. They require a terrestrial workforce.
And that draws us into the darkest reality of the third millennium.
Yeah. For anyone listening right now from the relative safety of an HA mountain bunker, this next part is the reality for the 65% of humanity currently trapped outside our network.
It's sobering. The invaders established massive coastal processing pods in the ruins of major metropolitan hubs. Tokyo, San Francisco, Sydney.
Millions of enslaved humans are kept there to build the bioships and oceanic pylons.
But because the abyssals are hemovores, the captive populations aren't merely a labor force. They are managed for maximum biological yield.
It's a blood farm.
Yes. The invaders have instituted a deeply sinister atmospheric engineering protocol within the barracks to maximize blood production.
The intermittent hypobaric conditioning, the science behind this is just twisted.
It is. The abyssals require captives with extreme polycythemia, which is an abnormally high red blood cell count.
Okay.
To force the human body to produce this, they alter the atmosphere in the living quarters, turning them into hypobaric chambers. They basically simulate a high-altitude, deeply oxygen-deprived environment.
Like sleeping on top of Mount Everest.
Exactly. When a human is chronically starved of oxygen, their kidneys panic and secrete a hormone called EPO. This hormone floods the bone marrow, forcing it to mass-produce dense, oxygen-carrying red blood cells.
Okay, I have to jump in here because the HA report's math on this doesn't add up at first glance. I've hiked the subterranean trails up to the alpine bunkers. I know what altitude sickness feels like.
It's brutal.
It destroys your muscles. You get chronic fatigue, migraines, pulmonary edema. If the aliens are suffocating their captive workforce in hypobaric chambers, how are those humans doing the heavy industrial labor required to build a 100-foot silicon spaceship?
They wouldn't be able to.
The workforce would just drop dead on the assembly line, right?
That would absolutely happen if they were suffocating them on the assembly line. But you are assuming the environment remains static? The conditioning is intermittent. The invaders carefully orchestrate the atmospheric shifts.
Yeah.
During the 12-hour work shifts, the assembly plants are actually flooded with heavy normal oxygen levels.
So they give them normal air while they are working.
Plentiful, rich oxygen. The captives can breathe easily, allowing their muscles to perform grueling, heavy industrial output without suffering altitude sickness or hyperoxic toxicity.
Which is what happens if you pump too much oxygen into a human lung and the cells begin to degrade.
Right, you have to balance it perfectly. And they balance it perfectly to maximize labor. But the moment the shift ends, the captives are marched back to the sealed barracks and the oxygen is violently purged from the room.
So they sleep in thin air.
The body goes into a state of severe physiological panic while they sleep, churning out massive amounts of thick, nutrient-dense blood to compensate.
It's a relentless, agonizing pendulum swinging between physical exertion and forced biological overproduction. We are talking about a cycle that has been running since 2890.
Over a century.
How does a human population survive that level of extreme stress over multiple generations without just dying out?
The system would have suffered total reproductive collapse decades ago if left to its own devices. But the abyssals apply strict automated genetic screening.
Right, the fertility rotation program.
They manage the captive population the way an ancient farmer would rotate crops. They constantly shuffle the genetic lines between the Tokyo, Sydney, and San Francisco hubs to prevent inbreeding and population bottlenecks.
They engineer the human race just enough to keep it fertile, ensuring a continuous, high-yield blood supply generation after generation.
It is grim.
It's incredibly grim, but this is exactly why we do these deep dives. We don't study the Terra Bethialis record to despair. We study it to find the cracks in their armor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's pivot. Let's talk about the resistance. How is the human alliance fighting back? It all comes back to the technology the captives are being forced to build, right? The quantum molecular silicon, or QMS.
The transition from human electronics to abyssal QMS is profound. Historically, human technology was based on binary conductive paths, just pushing electricity down a copper wire.
Just simple electronics.
Right, but the abyssals manipulate the atomic bonds of silicon at room temperature. They weave biological nervous tissue into crystalline structures to create technology that can bend light for cloaking, manipulate localized gravity, and hold back crushing atmospheric pressure.
It's basically tech alchemy, but it still relies on physical material. And that is the exact opening the human alliance, the remaining 35% of us, has been exploiting.
Operating out of the Swiss Alps, the Tibetan Plateau, and the Rockies.
Yeah, the HA has turned the northern hemisphere into a massive subterranean guerrilla staging ground, and they're using science against them.
The tactical doctrine of the HA is entirely built around the biological constraints we just outlined.
Right, because we can't just poison the Pacific Ocean with chemicals. The water volume is too massive, the buffer is too strong.
And standard military ordnance, like depleted uranium, simply corrodes in salt water or fails to penetrate at those depths.
So the HA leans into biology. The intelligence details how they deploy bioengineered silica-degrading enzymes.
They drop these hyperdense mineral plumes into the abyssal trenches.
And the plumes sink to the bottom and literally begin eating away at the structural integrity of the QMS biosilicon. We are infecting their architecture with a biological rot.
It is a slow, methodical degradation of our light prime.
But the most crucial tactical breakthrough involves those coastal bioships. As we discussed, those ships are not just vehicles. They're the only thing keeping the alien pilot from suffering explosive decompression in our atmosphere.
This is the ultimate aha moment in the intelligence drop.
It really is. It's brilliant asymmetric warfare. You don't need to destroy a 100-foot alien warship. You just need to scratch the window.
Exactly. The HA utilizes supercavitating kinetic torpedoes. These projectiles travel at staggering speeds underwater by generating a frictionless gas bubble around themselves.
And they are tipped with a highly specialized tungsten carbide alloy. Tungsten carbide doesn't rust in salt water, and it slices through biosilicon like butter.
But the goal of the torpedo isn't to hit the ship and cause a massive fiery explosion.
No explosives are necessary. The entire objective is mere penetration. The torpedo just needs to crack the biosilicon hull.
Let's walk through the physics of that, because it is incredible. You have a bioship hovering over the coast. Inside that ship, the artificial environment is pushing outward with 1,000 bar of deep-sea pressure to keep the alien's biology intact.
Right.
Outside the ship, you have Earth's surface atmosphere, which is barely 1 bar of pressure.
The pressure differential is catastrophic. The moment the tungsten carbide torpedo breaches the hull, the integrity of the reverse scuba suit fails.
The 1,000 bar of internal pressure forcefully vents outward into the thin surface atmosphere.
And the abyssal pilot experiences instantaneous explosive decompression. All the water inside its massive 30-meter body boils into vapor at room temperature in a fraction of a second.
Its cell walls literally shred themselves from the inside out.
Earth's own atmosphere acts as the weapon.
Yeah.
The invader is neutralized entirely because its biology is incompatible with our surface pressure. Pop the suit, and the environment does the rest.
Is a stunning exploitation of their core vulnerability.
It really is. So we've covered the entire board here. We've unpacked their frozen origins in the Oort Cloud, the decentralized cloud computing terror of their minds, the brutal physics of the processing pods, and how the HA is weaponizing our own atmosphere against them.
It's a lot of crucial information.
It is. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I keep going back to one specific detail in the Terra Bathyallus record. Something that wasn't elaborated on, but feels massive.
The psychoactive nature of human hemoglobin.
Yes. We know they don't just consume blood for the calories. It is a psychoactive vector that alters their neurochemistry. It powers their multi-threaded consciousness.
Which presents a deeply unsettling, yet strangely hopeful hypothesis for us to consider.
Right.
If the blood they consume directly alters their mental state, we must ask ourselves what exact chemical cocktail they are absorbing.
Think about where that blood is coming from. For over a century, the blood fueling their empire has been systematically farmed in the coastal processing pods.
It is the blood of a captive, terrified, traumatized, and deeply defiant species.
It is heavily saturated with cortisol, adrenaline, and generations of accumulated stress hormones.
If their cloud computing minds are directly wired into the chemical realities of that blood, could the very biology of humanity's collective suffering be subtly altering the invader's consciousness with every single harvest?
Are they absorbing our fear, our paranoia, our deep-seated aggression, without even realizing it? By relying on human trauma as a psychoactive fuel, are we slowly poisoning their minds from the inside out?
Are we driving the cloud computer mad?
It is a profound vulnerability that no tungsten torpedo could ever replicate.
Something to think about the next time you look out at that locked vault of an ocean.
They might be holding the keys, but the lock is rusting from the inside. Keep studying the HA intelligence drops, stay vigilant, and look out for one another in the dark. You have the knowledge, now use it.